Well, patching into today's video, we're going to have a look at the weather for the next 8 to 10 days. In today's video, that's going to take us up to around the 3rd of August, actually. We've got a few problems, really, with today's update. It looks as though the models are keen to start to introduce something a little bit cooler and more unsettled through next week. It's going to be a very subtle sort of subtle change from the very hot and dry weather that we've had for the last week or so into something a little bit cooler, a little bit more unsettled. It's going to be slow, there's going to be day by day changes, probably a very gradual slip in the temperatures, but nothing very dramatic taking place until we get through to maybe around day 10, where the Atlantic could start to push in really quite strongly. But of course, that is a long way off, and it's quite probable that that won't actually come off. I'll show you the charts in a moment and why I'm struggling really with the update that we've got today. Now, before I get on with the video, I just want to say about the advertising course. There's video ads or pages at GazWebBiz.com. If you could hit play on the video ad, you'll be helping to support GazWebBiz.com. Thanks very much for doing that. So we're going to start off with the 8 to 10 day 500 millibar hydrometer flow charts. This is from last night, actually. These update twice a day with the midnight runs and the midday runs. These are based on yesterday's midday update. They updated yesterday evening our time. The charts haven't been updated this morning, reflecting this morning's midnight runs. But it's a pretty good reflection of what's going to be taking place in the next 8 to 10 days' time, and why this sort of very gradual breakdown could be starting to take place. And the idea is really this big ridge out in the Atlantic. That is essentially what's been giving us our fine weather. It's been building in from the Atlantic and meeting up with this ridge up here to the east and the northeast of the country, sitting over Scandinavia. But what the models are seeing at the moment is that those ridges are going to pull apart, and the Atlantic ridge is going to pull out into the Atlantic and allow this sort of trough to start to set up around the British Isles. I'll just get rid of that and highlight it again. A bit of a trough could start to set up around the British Isles, really being driven by this main area of low pressure actually forming right over the top of the pole, over the Arctic, quite a deep area of low pressure there. But as these two ridges sort of pull apart from each other, some of the ridge going out into the mid-Atlantic, some shifting back towards western parts of Russia, we just start to bring the jet stream back down across the country and begin to develop this sort of weakish trough around the British Isles. And it's that trough really in the 500 millibar flow that could start to break down the very warm, if not hot, pattern that we've been in over the last few days, certainly the last week or 10 days or so. So here's the GFS temperature and precipitation ensembles, and we see that we are above average at the moment. The red line here is the 30-year average. We are well above the red line, well above the 30-year average at the moment, have been for a good week or two. And we keep it pretty warm for the next few days. As we get through towards the weekend, that's really when we start to see this change beginning to take place as temperature slips down a little bit, although still remaining above average. And to the start of next week, then we go down a little bit below average actually in terms of the upper air temperatures, but will still be very warm, I think, down on the surface, because the sun is very strong at this time of year, so it offsets what's happening in the upper atmosphere to some degree, and also just because we've got a lot of residual warmth left. It's been a very warm period, if not a hot period, down in the south. There's a lot of that sort of still down on the surface, and this time it takes a long while to sort of drain that away. So I think temperatures will probably be quite a bit higher actually for the start of next week than you would think looking at this ensemble. Even so, we are seeing a temperature decline, I think, as we go through the weekend into next week, and then we sort of keep average temperatures then through the rest of the ensemble. No sign of anything particularly dramatic taking place in terms of deviating from the 30-year average, but it certainly is a cooler setup cooler phase than we have been in for the past couple of weeks. The precipitation spikes show that we are bringing at least showers through at times over this period. There's the 1st of August there, and we're seeing beyond that we are bringing some showery conditions through at times. Certainly not a washout, nothing too dramatic being indicated there. Just the idea that the temperatures are slowly sliding away, and we are bringing showery conditions through at times. Here's the temperature anomaly for the next week, the 24th of July to the 1st of August, showing that it's going to be another warmer than average week there across many parts of the country. Although the anomalies are beginning to ease off a little bit. We're not in the deep red colours now, we're beginning to ease back closer towards average. Nevertheless, the temperatures over next week are still going to be warmer than they should be at this time of the year. The precipitation anomaly shows that we're going to be drier than average as well. So a pretty warm, pretty dry week coming up, but we will be bringing those showers at times. We will be lowering the temperatures somewhat. Here's the GFS chart for the start of next week, just showing what's happening here. We're bringing down this sort of northerly flow. There's the high pressure beginning to slip back into the Atlantic, beginning to bring down this slight northerly flow. That'll lower the temperatures somewhat as we go the weekend and into the start of next week. And then we sort of keep this ridge out in the Atlantic, trying to ridge in across the country through to the middle of next week. Keep an eye on this low pressure up around Iceland. That begins to move southeastwards in towards the Norwegian Sea and in towards perhaps the north-east of Scotland, but still really keeping the influence of the Azores high going. Actually, it's a mid-Atlantic high by this point, but keeping that high ridging in across England and Wales. So it's okay. It's not terrible through next week by any means. It just is a little bit cooler, a little bit more showery than we have had it. As we get through towards the final day of July, this is the 31st of July, again, we've got this low pressure sitting to the northeast of Scotland, so it'll be more unsettled up there. Maybe bands of showery sort of conditions coming south and east across the country, but it's pretty decent weather, I think, through much of next week. And then as we get through to the 1st of August, then we may start to see the high pressure begin to pull back even further into the Atlantic. And this low pressure, keep an eye on it, the next day of low pressure around Iceland, because as we go through to day 10, which is the 3rd of August, we start to push that through quite strongly. And that's a proper unsettled sort of situation developing there. The high pressure is pulling well out into the central part of the Atlantic now, allowing this low pressure to dive southeastwards from Iceland, and that's a proper area of heavy rain sweeping across the country and cool temperatures as well. As you follow the ice bars back, they're going up towards Greenland, so that really is setting up a proper unsettled pattern. That's a long way off. That's 10 days away, Sunday the 3rd of August, and it may well be that that never really materialises. This at the lower end, of the lower resolution end of the GFS model. So I wouldn't be all that certain about that coming off, to be honest. I think what we've got to talk about really for next week is gradual lowering in the temperatures from the hot conditions that we've got right now, but a lot of dry and fine weather really away from Scotland and Northern Ireland, probably continuing through next week. Here's the upper air temperatures starting on Friday. Very warm, if not hot, upper air temperatures there across the tree, and you just see that very gradually through next weekend that 10 Celsius line, which is telling us where the hot air is, basically over very warm air, that 10 Celsius line very slowly and gradually begins to slip further southwards and eastwards. By Sunday there it is lying across central parts of England. So it's going to be a very warm weekend for the south and southeast still, really. Temperatures will be many degrees above average down in the south. Could be knocking on the door of 30 degrees, 86 Fahrenheit for southern England on Saturday, for instance. But slowly but surely temperatures are sliding away. By the start of next week, the 10 Celsius isotherm line has actually moved down in towards France. We're underneath 10 Celsius now, although we're not cold, we're not even particularly cool, but temperatures are going back towards where they should be at this time of year. These are the surface temperatures showing that for Saturday, again a hot day really across many parts of the country. Could, I say, be knocking on the door of 30 degrees, 86 Fahrenheit for southern parts of England. But by the time we get through to Sunday, temperatures are lowering, still very warm in the south, could be up to 27, 81 but certainly turning cooler in the north, going down towards the low 20s or the upper teens for Scotland and northern England. By the time you get through to Monday, probably we're seeing temperatures across England and Wales going from the upper 20s towards the low to mid 20s. So somewhere between 22, 23, 24, possibly 25. It'll still be very warm, still very pleasant, but just not the uncomfortable sort of heat that we've got right now. Notice that shifting off towards the eastern part of Europe. Here's the ECMWF for the middle of next week. Again, we've got the ridge of high pressure extending in off the Atlantic. That low pressure to the north of Scotland, so I think we'll be more unsettled through next week for Scotland, but not bad for England and Wales. We'll be bound to showers probably coming through at times, but a lot of useful dry weather through much of next week. Temperatures lower than they have been, but still doing okay. And then as we get through towards the end of July, the start of August, then again the idea is that the pressure is pretty weakening across the country. That high pressure, the core of the high pressure, is putting well out into the central part of the Atlantic, actually starting to become centred off the coast of Newfoundland. That's far enough away to start to allow low pressure to really begin to come in from the Atlantic. And there we go on day 10, Sunday the 3rd of August, with that low pressure around Iceland really showing signs of starting to dig in. So that's when we could be looking at a proper switch to unsettled weather, but it's 10 days away, and it's certainly far enough away to have a lot of doubt about it. But GEM, finally, just have a look at what the Canadian model is showing. Again, the high pressure south west of the country on Wednesday, but still ridging in enough to be keeping a lot of dry and fine weather going away from through the last stages of next week. That low pressure comes into Scotland, turning it a little bit more unsettled up there. And then as we get through towards the start of August, again, that's when we get that real sort of breakdown from the northwest, with this low pressure beginning to dive in. So all three models, the GFS, the GEM and the ECM, are sort of indicating that by the time you get through to day 10, the 3rd of August, the first weekend of August, we push that low pressure through properly from Iceland. It's 10 days away, it's far enough away to have a lot of uncertainty about it, but that's sort of where the models are seeing things going as we get through towards the start of August. But for next week, I don't think we're looking at too bad a week, really. I think probably looking at an end to the heat wave over the weekend. I don't think next week will be particularly hot, but it'll still be warm, still very warm probably at times down in the south. Just temperatures will be a little bit more comfortable than they have been. And really quite a nice week, actually, I think could be on the cards again for next week. Some bands of showers coming through at times, but nothing too bad. But we'll be keeping this idea at the back of our minds. By the time we get through to the start of August, we could be seeing something a little bit more fundamental in terms of a breakdown. And that's where the models are going this morning, but it's far enough away to be uncertain. We'll have a look at the month-ahead forecast from the Japanese model tomorrow. That could be quite enlightening. Also have a look at some other longer range stuff as well. That's all for now. Hope you found the video interesting. It's a complicated one to get across, because I don't want to go too over the top with this idea that things are breaking down, because I don't think next week is going to be too bad at all. But beyond that is when we could be starting to see signs of something a little bit more fundamental in terms of a breakdown. That's it for now. Hope you found the video interesting. Thanks for watching. Bye for now.